Hi, I'm Joe Saunders with Miniature Landscape Hobbies, and in this episode we're going to take a deep dive look at AK Interactive's new product, the Playmarkers, for miniature painting and tabletop gaming. Is this a product you want to add to your painting arsenal? Let's find out together. Miniature Landscape Hobbies is proudly supported by these sponsors. I have a confession to make. When I got the full set of AK Interactive Playmarkers from Torchlight Games, my intention was to do an unboxing, but I was just too excited to wait to set up my cameras. So I busted out the gold Playmarker and used it right away. And basically, I fell in love with this product right then and there. But this isn't very informative for you, the viewer, so I decided a couple of days later to go to town using the Playmarkers on another subject to really test them out. This way you can use your own judgment based on my work to decide if you want to invest in these. Up front, I have to say, Torchlight sent me these for the video, but I'm going to try to remain constructively critical of the product. I also need to mention that these aren't an end-all be-all product. That is, don't buy this product and expect it to do everything, because it won't. Your regular brush-on acrylics or speed paints are still going to be your main tool as a model painter, but the Playmarkers do have some specific uses, at least in my opinion. To dive in, I thought there's likely no better way to show this product than to just start working on a subject with them. To start, I grabbed this Grim Reaper type model I had lying around. My brother-in-law gave it to me a couple of years ago, and I thought he would make as good a subject as any. I don't know the brand or range for this model, so don't ask. If you know, maybe mention it in the comments. After undercoating him dark gray, I began dry brushing the Reaper in grimy gray, then straight white. This would form underpainting to put speed paints on top of, and this will provide natural shading. Now I could have put down solid colors here with the Playmarkers, but it would use a ton of paint, and Playmarkers aren't for zenithal effects. Their opacity would obscure the underpainting. So for the first steps, I let the speed paints do the heavy lifting and applied a mix of Beowulf Blue and Grim Black, which I let dry fully. The main areas were now blocked in, and the speed paints gave the desired effect. They laid over top the shades of underpainting to create the midtones. If you've not done this method before, please honestly give it a try. In the old days, it would have taken me hours to get to this point, as you would need to layer up from the darkest to the lightest to get the midtones. But this isn't the way with speed paints. I figure at this point I'd only been at the job for about 20 minutes. One thing that speed paints don't do well is create sharp top highlights. But this is where I figured the Playmarkers would come into their own. Grabbing light gray, I press the button that charges the nib and let the paint flow. Playmarkers aren't like AK's real color markers. They end in a brush tip, not a nylon cone. As such, you need to watch your consistency. To do this, just keep some paper towel around to wick away any extra paint until the bristle tip is loaded in a way similar to a paintbrush. Now I was ready, and I used the marker to highlight the very most pronounced edges of the model. The long brushes on the tip really help here, as they're long enough to let me drag the tip sideways over the edges to highlight. This also has the added advantage that I didn't need to go back to my palette to reload the paint. At first I found controlling the opacity to be kind of tricky, but after learning to balance pressure on the bristles and with wicking away excess paint on the paper towel, I got the hang of it, and it went well. And honestly, pretty fast. When I was done with the light gray, I pushed the contrast even further with the white marker. After this, I was satisfied that Playmarkers could do highlight work like crazy, but as most painters discover, highlights can get a little too sharp and distinct from the underlying colors. This was no different here, so I decided to do a unifying wash of runic gray speed paint over the previous work. I was worried that the wash might reactivate the marker paint and damage my work, but it didn't. In fact, the wash took well, and with one coat the model was looking good with subtle yet distinct highlights. Using this method, I pushed ahead, blocking in various other areas with speed paints, then added a highlight or two with the marker, followed by a unifying wash. It all went smoothly and looked great. But now I came to a new challenge. I was going to work with red on the wrappings on the Reaper's arms and scythe, and as we know, red is tough to work with. We need to double back to theory here for a minute. Red paint is usually fairly low on pigment density, meaning that it doesn't handle steep shading variations from the underpainted layers very well. So I always throw cleanup layers under the red. To do this, you need to lay down white on the soon-to-be red areas to make a super bright patch to put the red onto. Grabbing white, I went over the wrappings and paying out more paint into the bristles by shaking the marker. I got solid opaque whites in just one pass. Better still, this flowed smoothly and dried very fast. Following this, I painted thin slaughter red speed paint over top, and this all worked just fine. But now I hit a rough patch. I needed to highlight the red wraps. The trick with red is avoiding lightening it with white. Adding white to red makes pastel pink, and this never seems to work, at least for most subjects. And since this is the Grim Reaper we're painting, I figured that if he was wearing My Little Pony pink sweatbands, this would be an issue. So I used the flesh-colored marker for the highlighting instead. This, however, didn't work that well. I couldn't get the consistency of the flesh tones right. It was just too opaque, and it flowed too heavily. I also couldn't get the tip of the marker brush to make a fine enough line. The result was the highlights were more like blobs than the subtle areas of increased reflection which I wanted. Fortunately, there's another product here that we can use to fix this: Strong Tone Wash. I fired 3 layers onto the My Little Pony pink bits, and after it dried, I got a more muted red. So I breathed a sigh of relief. Forging on, I was now at the metallics, and to be honest, I really hate painting metallics. I find no matter what brand of paint you use, the results are always inconsistent and unrealistic looking. I was hoping that the Playmarkers would redeem themselves here, and after applying a base layer of copper, they did. Copper, then a gold highlight and a silver top highlight, followed by a dark tone wash, and boom! The metallics were consistent, had decent opacity, and were easy to control on the model. I was really happy with this. So much so that I decided to push my luck on the next area. You see, the Grim Reaper needs his scythe to complete his ensemble, and this one element takes up a lot of real estate on the model, so I'd need to pay special attention to the blade. I started with the gunmetal Playmarker and blocked the blade in. This gave a nice opaque uniform layer to start. Now I got out the light and dark grays and drew scratches and scuffs on the blade to up the visual interest. I followed with an edge highlight from the silver marker. This looked sharp and bright, but it didn't give the underworld vibes. The Grim Reaper just doesn't seem to be the kind of dude that worries much about hygiene. So I toned it all down with a wash of desolate brown, which added a weathered effect. A quick renewed silver highlight on the edges, and I was officially in love with the Playmarkers. This concluded my work involving the markers, as there wasn't much left. The one thing I did do after this, though, is use another product Torchlight sent me a while back, AK's weathering pencils. Applying several earth tones to the edges of the Reaper's cape, I blended these out with a moist brush, and this gave our skeleton friend a suitably time-worn, grimy appearance. Weathering pencils are a seriously good product, and I've covered them many times in my other videos, but let me tell you, you're going to want to check them out. After I was done with the weathering pencils, all that was left now was a quick spritz of matte varnish, and the project was complete. So now we come to the part of the video where I give my honest impressions for the AK Interactive Playmarkers. I think it should be apparent that for the most part I really love these, particularly the metallics. These just work and complement my beloved speed paints and weathering pencils extremely well. That being said, we need to be realistic here. I did struggle with the consistency of a few colors. Sometimes they were just too runny. In particular, this was the case with flesh tones. Now, this should not be a deal breaker, but you need to understand that like regular paints, there's a learning curve to getting the results you want. I also question how much paint is really in each marker. I did not use these to block in any large areas, and I suggest you don't either. I just don't think there's the 15 to 20 milliliters of paint in these that we're used to getting out of traditional paint bottles. Therefore, I would not be tempted to paint whole models with these, as the cost of replacement markers would really pile up. Lastly, between the tip and the consistency, I find that point work is hard with play markers. Not impossible, mind you, but it is a challenge. As such, these will not replace your handy 000 brushes anytime soon. This aside though, I can say these markers are worth investing in if you want to switch things up or augment your current selection of paints. So there you have it, my complete and realistic review of AK's play markers. If you would like these, please take the link in the video description to Torchlight Games to pick them up for yourself. Or better still, join my Patreon for just $3 a month, then pop over to torchlight.com to get a 5% discount. If you're a serious painter, this discount will pay for itself right away, and it will support my channel at the same time, which of course I would really appreciate. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and consider joining my Patreon for awesome deals and perks, and support my channel while doing it. See you next time for more miniature gaming, painting, and diorama videos. But most importantly, until then, remember to keep building life in miniature.